Rain beat hard against the windows of Boston University when Helena Cardoso entered the classroom that Monday in March. At 47 years old, she carried a natural elegance that time had only refined. Her brown hair fell in soft waves over her shoulders, some silver strands shining under the fluorescent light like small medals of lived experience. A professor of comparative literature for more than 2 decades, Helena knew every corner of that institution. Her classes were famous for their academic rigor, but also for the passion with which she discussed each work, each character, each line of poetry that seemed to have been written especially for that moment. That's when she saw him. Gabriel Morales was sitting in the 3rd row, slightly to the left. His 21 years showed in his still uncertain posture, in the hands that gripped the pen with unnecessary force, in the hazel green eyes that blinked nervously as they watched the professor enter. He had transferred from a community college in California, seeking a more robust literary studies program. "Good morning," Helena began, her firm voice echoing through the room, with a slight accent that betrayed her Brazilian origins. "Today, we're going to discuss Lady Chatterley's Lover by D.H. Lawrence. I want you to reflect on the boundaries between desire and transgression, between what we feel and what society allows us to feel." Gabriel wrote down every word. There was something about the way she spoke that hypnotized him. It wasn't just the content, it was the intensity, the way her eyes lit up when mentioning certain passages, as if each book were a window to forbidden worlds that only she knew. For weeks, he tried to convince himself it was just intellectual admiration. Helena was brilliant, provocative in her analyses, capable of making connections no one else saw. But there was something more. Something that made his heart race when she passed between the desks, when her subtle perfume, something between lilies and wood, reached him. Helena noticed too. How could she not? His eyes followed her with an attention that went beyond academic curiosity. There was an interest there that scared her, and at the same time, awakened something she thought she had buried years ago, after a marriage that ended in quiet divorce and a routine that had become comfortably predictable. It was on an April afternoon that everything changed. Gabrielle had stayed after class to discuss an essay on Claudius Lispector. The room was empty, the hallway silent. Just the distant sound of footsteps and conversations muffled by space. "Your essay is disturbing," Helena said, removing her reading glasses and looking at him. "In the best possible sense. You write about passion like someone who knows the territory." Gabriel swallowed hard. "I try to understand what the authors felt, to dive into that emotional universe." "And do you succeed?" She approached, leaning on the desk. "Can you really feel what Clarice felt when she wrote about the desire that consumes, that destroys?" Their eyes met, and for a moment the world seemed to suspend its movement. Gabriel felt his mouth go dry. "Sometimes I think I do," he answered, his voice lower. "Sometimes I think I understand what it is to desire something you shouldn't desire." Helena looked away first. The air had become dense, charged with dangerous electricity. "You should develop these ideas further," she said, returning to her professional posture, though her voice betrayed a slight tremor. "You have potential for interesting research." In the following days, Gabriel began appearing during her office hours, always with legitimate questions, deep academic discussions, but they both knew something more was happening in those encounters. The conversations extended, drifted into personal territories. She talked about her loneliness disguised as independence. He shared his fears of not living up to the expectations he had for himself. "I have the feeling I'm always chasing something, as if there were a better version of me that I can never reach," Gabrielle confessed one afternoon. Helena smiled sadly. "Welcome to the human condition. That feeling doesn't pass with age. We just learn to live with it." "And how do you live with it?" She was silent for a moment, looking out the window at the campus covered by Boston's characteristic fog. "Poorly," she admitted. "I take refuge in books, in classes, in routine. I built a very safe life. Sometimes I wonder if I didn't make the mistake of trading intensity for stability. Gabriel dared. It's never too late to change that. Her eyes returned to him, loaded with something indefinable. Desire? Fear? Hope? Gabrielle, she began, but the office door opened and a department colleague entered, breaking the moment. May arrived with longer days and the end of Massachusetts' harsh winter. The tension between Helena and Gabrielle had become almost unbearable. They communicated through glances, through meaningful pauses, through words that said one thing but suggested another. It was Helena who took the initiative. She invited him for coffee off campus, to a place where they wouldn't be recognized. A small literary cafe in Cambridge, with walls covered in bookshelves and discreet tables in the corners. "I need to be honest with you," she said as soon as they sat down, her hands wrapping around the cup as if she needed the warmth. "I'm feeling something that I shouldn't feel, something that goes against everything I learned about professional ethics, about appropriateness, about common sense." Gabrielle took her hand on the table, a brave and tender gesture. "Me too." "You're my student, Gabrielle. You're 21 years old. I'm 47. There's an abyss between us, not just of age, but of positions, of power, of feelings?" He interrupted. "Because mine are very clear. I can't stop thinking about you. It's not student admiration. It's not passing fascination. It's something deeper, more real than anything I've ever felt." Her eyes filled with tears. "This is crazy. It would be the end of my career if anyone found out. You'd be judged, labeled. People would say I took advantage of you, What if I don't care what people would say?" Gabrielle squeezed her hand, a brave and tender gesture. "What if what I feel for you is greater than any fear?" Helena took a deep breath. "You don't understand what you're saying. You're young. You have your whole life ahead of you. I'm a middle-aged woman, divorced, with a career I built brick by brick and could lose in an instant." "Then tell me to leave," Gabrielle challenged her, his eyes fixed on hers. "Tell me you feel nothing and I will never bring up the subject again." But she didn't say it. Instead, her tears fell silently as she squeezed his hand back. "I can't tell you that, because it would be a lie." That night, Helena returned to her Back Bay apartment with her heart in turmoil. She called her best friend, Mariana, who was also Brazilian and lived in New York. "Are you crazy?" Mariana almost shouted from the other end of the line. "Helena, do you realize what's at stake here? We're in the United States. An accused like this, and you could even be deported." "I do," Helena replied, her voice tired. "Believe me, I spent the last few weeks torturing myself over this. But Mariana, when was the last time you saw me really alive, really feeling something?" Her friend sighed. "Years. But that doesn't justify it. He's your student. The rules exist for a reason, especially here." "I know," Helena admitted. "That's why I decided to wait. Wait for the semester to end, for him to no longer be my student, and then we'll see if this is real or just a forbidden fantasy that seduces us precisely because it's impossible." The 3 months following were a delicious torture. Gabriel continued attending Helena's classes, but now there was a tacit agreement between them. They would wait. Nothing would happen while he was her student. But waiting didn't mean not feeling. Each class was an exercise in restraint. Helena chose increasingly charged texts with erotic tension. Anais Nin, Henry Miller, Marguerite Duras, as if testing both their limits. Gabriel participated in discussions with a new intensity, each comment seeming like a double entendre, each literary analysis a metaphor for what they couldn't say openly. When Duras writes about the lover, Gabriel said in a particularly tense class, she's not just talking about bodies meeting. She talks about souls that recognize each other through the barriers of time, culture, social expectations, about how desire can be the most honest thing there is, even when the world says it's wrong. Helena's eyes shined. Continue. The lover is forbidden not because the love is wrong, but because it challenges the established order. And maybe that's exactly why it's so intense, because it requires courage, because it requires you to choose between what you feel and what's expected of you. The silence in the room was absolute. Everyone felt that something beyond a literary discussion was happening, but they couldn't identify exactly what. Outside of classes, they communicated through careful messages, always maintaining a professional tone in case someone read them, but choosing words the other would understand. Helena sent excerpts of poems. Gabriel responded with analyses that were disguised declarations. Because I love you more today than yesterday and less than tomorrow, Rosamond Girard, for Thursday's discussion. The temporal progression of love as intensification of feeling, tomorrow as a promise of greater depth. I understood the reference perfectly, Professor. They met casually at Harvard's Widener Library, exchanging intense glances between the historic shelves. Once their fingers touched when reaching for the same book, and the electricity of the contact was so strong that Gabriel had to step away, his heart racing. Sorry, he murmured. Don't be sorry, Helena replied softly, looking around to make sure they were alone. Never apologize for what you feel. June arrived with its hot days and the end of classes. Gabriel took his final exam in Helena's course, a 20-page essay on transgression as a liberating element in modern literature. She read every line 3 times, marveled by his intellectual maturity, by the way he intertwined theory and emotion. She gave him the highest grade, and at the end of the paper, she wrote by hand, "See you soon, H." The first Friday after the semester ended, Helena was in her apartment when the doorbell rang. Her heart knew who it was before she even opened the door. Gabriel was there, with a bottle of California wine and an old copy of 100 Years of Solitude. He said, extending the book, "I found it at a used bookstore in the North End. First Portuguese edition. I know you collect them." Helena took the book with trembling hands. "Gabriel, you didn't have to." "I did," he interrupted. "I needed to see you outside that classroom. I needed to be here as Gabriel, not as your student. You said we'd wait for the semester to end. It ended." She let him in, her heart pounding. Her apartment was exactly as he imagined. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, plants in corners, soft light, Brazilian jazz playing softly. Through the window, you could see the illuminated city and the Charles River in the distance. They sat on the couch, drinking wine and talking like they couldn't before. About life, about dreams, about fears. "My marriage ended 5 years ago. Not dramatically, it was more like a slow extinction. We realized we had become roommates, not partners. He wanted to return to Brazil. I wanted to stay here, where I built my career. In the end, neither of us was wrong. We just wanted different things." "And do you think this is real?" Gabriel asked, pointing to the space between them. "Us." Helena looked deep into his eyes. "Honestly, it terrifies me how real it seems. I try to convince myself it's crazy, that it's just my loneliness and your curiosity, but it's not," he completed. "I know the difference between curiosity and certainty, Helena. And I'm certain about you since that first class, when you talked about desire and transgression as if you knew both personally." He moved closer slowly, giving her time to pull back if she wanted, but Helena didn't pull back. When their lips met, it was as if the world finally made sense. The kiss was soft and urgent at the same time, loaded with months of waiting. His hands on his face, hers in his hair. 26 years of difference disappeared in that moment. There were only 2 human beings who deeply desired each other. When they separated, both were breathless. "This changes everything," Helena whispered. I know, and I still don't regret it. They established rules. It had to be this way, no matter how painful. Nothing on campus. Nothing in places where they could be recognized. Gabriel still had 2 years of coursework ahead, and Helena was a professor in the department. If anyone found out, she would be accused of harassment, abuse of power, all the terrible things people think when they see a relationship like this. Worse still, in the United States, where lawsuits and accusations could destroy a career in a matter of days. People don't understand, Helena said one night, lying in his arms in her apartment. They see numbers, 47 and 21. They see positions, professor and student. They don't see what really matters. And what really matters? Gabriel asked, kissing her hair. That you make me feel alive for the first time in years. That our conversations are the deepest I've ever had. That when I'm with you, I forget all the reasons why this should be wrong and remember only how right it is. Their meetings happened in hiding. Late afternoons in her apartment, always with the curtains closed. Walks in Salem or Providence, nearby cities where no one knew them. Once, they escaped to Cape Cod off-season, staying at a simple inn in Provincetown where they were just a couple. What would it be like if we could be normal? Gabriel asked as they walked on the cold beach, holding hands without fear of being seen. Helena squeezed his hand. Define normal. Me picking you up after work, dinners at restaurants in Boston, introducing you to my parents when they come visit me from California. Small things couples do without thinking twice. Your parents, Helena sighed. Gabriel, I could be their age. How would you explain? By telling the truth, that I fell in love with an extraordinary woman, and if they don't understand, that's their problem. But they both knew it wasn't that simple. Gabriel's family still didn't know anything. Helena was sure they would see her as a predator, an older woman who seduced their son. Gabriel's friends were also a problem. He had only told his closest friend, Tyler, who reacted exactly as expected. Dude, are you crazy? The professor? She's old as hell. She's 47, not 80, Gabriel defended. And age is nothing but a number. Well, if you're into MIFFs, Tyler laughed, but stopped when he saw Gabriel's expression. Sorry, man. It's serious then? More serious than anything in my life. The problem with secrets is that they weigh heavy, and the longer time passes, the heavier they become. Helena began to notice the looks in the department. Nothing obvious, nothing she could prove, but there was suspicion in the air. Professors commented casually about the dangers of inappropriate proximity with students. In faculty meetings, she felt eyes on her, evaluating every word. The department had just gone through a scandal involving another professor, and everyone was hypersensitive. I'm getting paranoid, she confessed to Mariana on a call. Or you're becoming aware, her friend retorted. Helena, you know you can't continue like this. Not in the United States, where any accusation becomes a lawsuit. Either end it or make it public and face the consequences. What about Gabriel? He still has 2 years of coursework. Making this public now would destroy his reputation. People would say he's getting advantages, that his grades are inflated, Then end it. Helena was silent, stirring her coffee cup without appetite. I can't. For Gabriel, the wait was different, but equally cruel. He lived a double life. With his friends, he had to pretend interest in girls his age, participate in conversations about parties and bars that no longer interested him. When he was with Helena, he was free to be who he really was. Sometimes I want to scream, he said one night, to tell everyone I can't stand hiding you anymore, as if it were something shameful. Helena touched his face. I know, and I hate myself for putting you in this position. It's not you. It's the world that can't understand that love has no formula. But the pressure was starting to appear between them too. Small arguments about insignificant things. Helena complaining that Gabriel was immature. Gabriel accusing Helena of being controlling. You treat our relationship like an academic project, always analyzing, always trying to find the rational approach. Why can't you just feel? Because I have more to lose, she replied, tears finally falling. You're 21 years old. If this goes wrong, you move on, meet other people, live your life. I'm 47. This is probably my last chance to feel something like this. And at the same time, it's the riskiest thing I've ever done. My career, my reputation, my visa, everything I've built could go down the drain if someone finds out. Gabriel hugged her, both crying. I'm sorry. I didn't think about it from that angle. And I need to stop being so afraid, I admitted. It's hard. It's very hard. It happened in September. Helena was in her office on campus when the department chair asked to speak to her. The tone was formal, cold, very American in its seriousness. Professor Cardoso, some concerning rumors have come to my attention about a possible inappropriate relationship with a student. Helena's blood ran cold. Rumors aren't facts. I understand, but I'd like you to understand the seriousness of the situation. If there's any truth to this, it would be a serious violation of our code of ethics and possibly Massachusetts law. The student in question is Gabriel Morales. Gabriel is no longer my student, Helena replied, keeping her voice steady despite internal panic. The semester ended months ago. But it was when you were seen together at a cafe in Cambridge, and he continues to be a student at this university while you're a professor. The issue isn't just technical, Professor. It's about appearances, about the department's integrity, about our institutional responsibility. Helena took a deep breath. With all due respect, my personal life is mine. I didn't violate any rules. There was nothing while Gabriel was my student, and even now, there's nothing that violates regulations. So you confirm there's a relationship. Trap. Helena realized too late. I'm saying I didn't violate any rules. If there are more questions, I'd like to have a representative present. The meeting ended in a tense standoff. Helena returned home trembling. She called Gabriel immediately. They know. Not everything, but they suspect. Gabriel, maybe it's time to what? Give up? His voice was firm. I'm not going to do that. If we need to make this public, we will. You don't understand what you're saying. Your reputation and my career here in the United States could end. Lawsuits, accusations. Screw my reputation, he interrupted. I'm not going to hide you anymore. I'm not going to pretend I don't love the most incredible woman I've ever met just because people are afraid of what they don't understand. That night, they talked until dawn, weighing options, discussing scenarios. In the end, they made a decision. They would wait for Gabriel to graduate. A year and a half remained. Helena would request a sabbatical, temporarily stepping away from the department to work on research. This would remove the direct professor-student relationship and give time so that when they finally made the relationship public, the situation would be clearer. A year and a half, Gabriel said, holding her face. And after that, I don't care who knows. I want you with me openly, without fear. A year and a half, she repeated like a mantra. But the universe had other plans. 2 weeks later, at a fraternity party, Gabriel was forced to attend to keep up appearances. A drunk classmate approached him and asked loud enough for others to hear, "Is it true?" You're screwing Professor Helena? Silence spread through the party like a wave. Gabriel turned red. It's none of your business. Oh, so it is true, she laughed, cruelly. Everyone was suspecting, but wow, a 50-year-old woman? You must have a serious Oedipus complex. She's not 50 and you don't know anything, Gabriel replied, his voice trembling with anger. But the damage was done. The next day, the entire campus was talking. Anonymous posts on the university's Reddit, messages in the department's WhatsApp group, looks in the hallways, whispers that stopped when Helena passed. The situation reached its peak when the student newspaper, the Daily Free Press, published an article, Professor and Student, When Power Dynamics Crossed the Line. The article didn't name anyone directly, but the clues were too obvious.